Juan Soto just signed a 15-year, $765 million deal with the New York Mets. It's the largest in sports history, but is it the best? There have been other more interesting deals, like the legendary deal for Bobby Bonilla, who will receive $1.2 million from those same Mets on July 1st every year until 2035. Bonilla last played for the team in 1999. Or the shoe deal that maybe saved Allen Iverson's life, or at least his bank account. His lifetime brand deal with Reebok withheld $32 million to be paid out to him in 2030 when he's 55 and wiser than he was back when he was spending $40,000 a night at strip clubs and going to rehab. I'm not sure that either of those are better than the Soto deal, though. Regardless, the best deal in sports was signed by a couple of Latvian brothers who owned a knitting company. Ozzy and Daniel Silna got rich in the textile industry after learning the business from their father, who had immigrated from Europe. After selling the company in the early 70s, they decided they wanted to own an NBA team. Dan had an obsession with the game, playing in high school and trying but being cut from the team at Columbia. They approached the owners of the Detroit Pistons in 1974 with an offer of $4.85 million to buy the team, but were turned down. This led them to the American Basketball Association, or ABA, the one with the red, white, and blue ball that was a smaller upstart league. The brothers thought that the NBA would eventually merge with the ABA, and so owning a team there could be a backdoor way of getting into the big leagues. So they purchased the Carolina Cougars for $1 million. Then, to try to make the most of their investment, they moved the team to St. Louis because St. Louis was the largest television market without a team at the time, and they renamed them the Spirit. After 2 tough years of good basketball but money-losing operations, the brothers were proven correct about the inevitable merger. The NBA came knocking. However, they weren't interested in all of the teams. They only wanted 4. The Nuggets, Pacers, Nets, and Spurs were in. The Kentucky Colonels and the Spirits were out. A 7th team, the Virginia Squires, had collapsed under their financial burden and would not be continuing. This didn't mean that the Colonels and Spirits were totally out of luck, though. The merger was only possible if the teams approved it unanimously. The 2 owners being left behind would have to be paid out. John Y. Brown of the Colonels would take $3 million and eventually become the governor of Kentucky. The brothers had other ideas. They took less money, $2.2 million, but negotiated for more upside. If they couldn't have a team in the league, they wanted a revenue stream as though they did. This was thinking that had originally applied to the Virginia Squires that had folded. Ozzy and Dan expected the NBA to take 6 ABA teams and just leave out the Squires, who had been struggling. The brothers, believing they'd need the Squires' vote for the merger, hatched a plan based around TV rights. They were forward-looking enough to know that the money was in television, as seen by their selection of St. Louis as the market for the former Carolina Cougars. When the Squires dropped out entirely, this plan became their plan. An agreement was reached. Each of the 4 teams entering the league would give 1/7 of their TV revenue to Ozzy and Dan, or even better, 1/7 of their revenue as though the league had 28 teams in it. That way, if the league kept expanding, their share wouldn't shrink as that happened. And the time period of the deal was forever. The brothers had to wait a little for this to pay off. The ABA didn't receive any TV money for the first 3 years after the merger because of the existing NBA TV deal. But once that expired and there was a new one, it soon became clear that the deal was a good one. First, there was Magic Johnson and Larry Bird that brought attention to the NBA. Around that time, a deal was floated to buy out the brothers. The offer made to them was $5 million over 8 years, but they countered asking for $8 million over 5 years, basically saying that the terms were not even close to what they were looking for. By 1995, Gary Hunter, vice president of business operations for the Nuggets, one of the teams that were paying the Silnas, said the deal, quote, might be the best all-time settlement in the history of professional sports. Then came Michael Jordan, then LeBron James, then the explosion of pricing for content as streaming services made it so live TV was the only thing keeping people on their cable plans. 2 more teams got added to the league, but remember, it didn't mean anything to Ozzie and Dan. It got to the point where the Nuggets, Pacers, Nets, and Spurs were financially disadvantaged versus other teams in the league due to the payments that they were forced to make. By 2014, the defunct Spirits of St. Louis were pulling in a ridiculous $19 million per year. Plus, there was potential for the net cast by the deal to grow even larger. The brothers were suing to have their percentage applied to revenue derived from NBA TV, foreign broadcasting, and league pass. But the brothers were getting older. In 2014, with a new TV deal looming that everyone knew would bring a big step up in revenue, the 4 ABA teams brought out the bazooka to try to buy them off. $500 million. Ozzie was 82. There might be a lot more money to come in the future, but as he put it 20 years prior, the only thing wrong with Perpetuity, you can't live that long. They took the deal. Maybe he knew his time was short, and $500 million could pull forward a lot of future years worth of payments. If that was his thinking, then it was the right decision because Ozzie died just 2 years later. His brother is still alive. That new TV deal, it turns out, would have been worth about $55 million per year, and had the perpetual contract still been going today, the TV deal that begins in 2025 would bring that figure up to $114 million. When it was all said and done, Ozzie and Dan collected about $800 million over the life of the deal with effectively no time or expenses needed to maintain it. So that's the best contract in the history of sports, except keep this in mind. The brothers really just wanted to own an NBA franchise. And to enter the NBA, the 4 ABA teams that had made it had to pay an entry fee of about $3 million. Today, the value of the Spurs, Nets, Nuggets, and Pacers franchises are estimated to be between 3.5 to 4.5 billion. There's a legitimate argument to be made that the winners in the best deal in the history of sports also got totally screwed. Thanks for watching, guys.